money buys you happiness is for the most part not true. Now, even though there are areas of your life that you can buy that will eventually yield you to become more happy, money doesn't effectively buy you happiness, because if that's the case, then why do a lot of people who have, who are millionaires, who have high social status, who are celebrities, who have an abundance of wealth, why do they commit suicide? Why do they fall into the rabbit hole of depression? Why do they feel a void of emptiness? Now, you might be at this point that you are, perhaps feeling this sentiment right now, and perhaps you don't really understand why you feel, a void of emptiness and why you are essentially not happy. And in this video, guys, I'm gonna debunk what happiness effectively actually means, and why for a lot of people, or essentially for all of us, why money cannot actually buy us happiness. Now, I want you guys to understand that in the modern society that we live in, there are two fundamental layers of Maslow's hierarchies that have already been, in the most part of the world, satisfied already. Now, if you guys have never heard or seen Maslow's hierarchy, whether you are in philosophy, or I believe they teach it in biology or psychology as well, then you guys will understand this, that Maslow hierarchy is basically a depiction of how we humans fundamentally philosophize our life. And so in the first level, you have the safety needs, or the basic needs. Then we have social stability. Then we have social wealth, or wealth, social status, and up there, the big question mark, we have transcendence. Now, I'm going to explain to you guys what that is in just a moment now, but I want you guys to understand, to the point I made earlier, was in most parts of the world, unless you live in a part of the world that hasn't really satisfied the most fundamental needs, like for example war countries or countries in absolute poverty, but in most modern societies we have these safety needs, which includes nutrition, a house, clean water supply, hygiene. Most of us already have this settled, and due to the modern innovation of technology and social media, a lot of us have, to some degree, a good social stability. Now, that includes, if not a good relationship to your family, you have friends, you have a support group, you have a community with similar interests. A lot of this has been enabled through social media. For example, on Facebook, we can, enter communities and groups that are within our own interests. Now, if we are in a position where we have settled these both fundamental needs, chronologically speaking, our next layer or our next objective is to accumulate wealth, and in other words, accumulate social status. Now, in modern contexts, this is often very intertwined, meaning they are interchangeably used. For example, if you achieve social status, very often wealth is a byproduct of it, and the other way around as well. A lot of people who accomplish wealth as a byproduct reach a certain degree of social status. You can't have one without the other, but very often both of them come together. Now, this is the issue, guys, what I mentioned earlier regarding the idea of emptiness and being depressed and not essentially being happy. The problem is that, especially according to Maslow's hierarchy himself, a lot of people design their life in such a way where you want to project these two things only, and that is not good. So you kind of position yourself within society with a fundamental objective of acquiring some degree of social status and wealth. Now, that is fine, to some extent, because like we are after, let's say, some degree of power, and social status makes us feel powerful. Wealth allows us to buy some degree of freedom. A lot of these stuff are fine, but if you are not after what is essentially meaningful, and that is transcendence, then you will reach that position where you will feel a void of emptiness. And before you guys click off because you are absolutely either confused or I haven't really answered your question by this point, let me just explain. So I have been placed in this position, especially social status, wealth to some degree, because of my profession as a professional football player, and I've radically decided to literally go the other way around, because when I entered this phase, I realized that to some extent I had popularity, I had influence, I had some extent of wealth, but I wasn't essentially happy. And if you haven't reached the stage yet, you won't really understand what it means, but I can assure you, you might be at this point right now, that if you reach this zone, let's call it this zone, then it's either two ways what you can do. So either you keep recycling yourself with the hedonic treadmill, which I got from the book Thinking Unclear. It's called Hedonic Treadmill. And so what happens here is that principally you basically repeat the same shitty habits that make you temporarily happy. For example, you see that very common among celebrities. They literally party very often, and that is exactly what it's explaining, because if you party every week, for example, you make yourself happy, and then the next day, I don't know if you had a hangover, you feel sad or upset, and then the week or the days after that, you repeat that shitty cycles, and then you become happy, you become sad. So it just goes in that hedonic treadmill, and that does not only include party. It could be anything such as drugs, which is more of an extreme sense. It can be other stuff like, I don't know, a lot of social life, or traveling around the world many times. Like a lot of these stuff, and even Andrew Tate mentions, is a black hole, in other words. And he mentioned that hedonism is a black hole. Hedonism is a black hole. And now I cite that from Andrew Tate, and before you guys tell me, oh, you're citing Andrew Tate, you're such an Andrew Tate fan, to some extent he's not wrong. And so let me explain. Because if you are, going through this hedonic treadmill, then what leaves you with an alternative is option B. And option B is the option that a lot of people don't want to go after, because it's perhaps the longer route, or perhaps it's the one that takes a little bit more effort. But option B is transcendence. And transcendence, as a arbitrary abstract, just means like amplifying or elevating yourself into a better social being. And so transcendence is quite a complex principle, but in simple terms, the way I personally describe or define transcendence is the following. Transcendence is, in my opinion, the pursuit of something meaningful. Something meaningful. Now, Jordan Peterson himself describes transcendence, or for him, the pursuit of something meaningful is the pursuit of wisdom. Pursuit of wisdom. And now, the pursuit of something meaningful can vary for you. It utterly depends on who you are as a person and what you are essentially after. But I can give you guys a few examples. For example, such as Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. That was his pursuit of something meaningful. Let's have Einstein's theory of relativity, E equals mc squared. And then we have Isaac Newton's, physics and all his laws that he has basically constructed. Then we have, Adam Smith, theory of economics, and the list goes on. And the point is that you are supposed to go after something that is meaningful. That's the way you design your life, because once you are in pursuit of something meaningful, the kicker here is, and the crazy thing is, you realize that social status and wealth will basically accompany this. It will basically come as a byproduct, and that's what you want to be after, guys. You want to be after transcendence, so that social status and wealth will automatically come as a byproduct. It's not about chasing wealth, it's not about chasing fame and social status, it's about chasing transcendence. It's about chasing something that is meaningful, whether that's wisdom, education, a life's dedication, a life's craft, creating family, the list goes on. And in fact, I've compromised or compiled an entire list within my own education platform, which you guys can check out if you want to. I'm not selling anything here, but if this is meaningful to you guys, then I would like you guys to give me some feedback on this so that I can continue making these videos. Thank you very much. I'll see you guys in the next video.